These two speakers here are my computer speakers that I use to edit videos and all kinds of stuff. There's also a subwoofer that's on the floor, and they've been flawless for me for well over 20 years. I got these as a gift from someone. They didn't like them on their computer, and at the time I think they were close to $300 back in, I think it was the late 80s or early 90s, something like that. And he just gave them to me, said, I don't like them. These things have lasted over 20 years, no problems at all, except for last weekend. Last weekend, the two satellite speakers here decided no longer to work, and all I kept hearing was a bass sound. I thought it was the computer, maybe some new drivers were downloaded into the computer that didn't match up with the sound card, it wasn't putting out sound. But I kept hearing bass out of the subwoofer, and then I decided to try my phone. I hooked up my phone, and same thing, no sound out of the two satellite speakers on the desk. All I kept hearing was bass. So I decided to do a little investigating. There's a little connector on the back of the subwoofer. Give me a second here. I'm just going to pull it up here. Okay, so this is the back of the subwoofer. And this connector here, with this cable, connects up to the satellite speakers on the desk. And I found that the connector here on the circuit board, all the solder joints had corroded to the point they no longer made connection. And that was my issue. So I decided to take this apart and fix it. Let me show you what went bad. I took apart the speaker to get the board out and started the visual inspection just to see if anything's obviously bad on the board, like for cold solder joints, cracks on the board, or even parts that kind of fall out or broken. I really can't believe the quality of this board, especially for something that's supposed to be a computer speaker. And this thing's held up for 25 years. Workmanship is very good on this. Like I said, I'm kind of impressed. It's only supposed to be a computer speaker, but this is definitely quality stuff. Having a quick look, everything looks pretty good until I got to this section. Now this is the section where the connector is underneath onto the board, and you can see the joints are in bad shape. Just getting my pick out to just push the parts to see if they move, and they kind of do, but the cracks are really obvious. So this must be the reason that these speakers would not play. So I'll just get ready to set the board up here, and we'll start the desoldering and soldering process. So first thing, grab the soldering iron. I'm going to plop up a bunch of solder on here. My intention is to put more solder on so that when I use the solder sucker, it's easier for it to pull the solder right off the board. Secondly, I'm not going to desolder all these pins at one time. I'm concerned that if the connector falls out of the board, trying to put it back in and line it up with the cabinet on the outside might be a bit of a challenge, and then the cable won't go in properly. So in order to avoid that, what I'm going to do is first desolder the smaller pins, and the bigger pins in the background will hold the connector in place. Then once I resolder the small ones, then I'll do the bigger ones in the back. I'll desolder those, resolder them, and the connector shouldn't move, and I won't have to worry about lining it up with the holes in the back of the cabinet. Very hard to maneuver things, and keep remembering that, oh yeah, someone's going to have to watch this and put it in the right place so you can see it. It's one of the big connections there, probably a ground, and the edge ones typically are the case in order to hold it in place as a strain relief, so when you plug in your cable it doesn't bounce around. Okay, enough solder on those joints. Now I'm going to get out the big solder sucker. Warm up the joint and hit it with the solder sucker. Boom, gone. Perfect. This board is a little easier to work with than something like a surface mount board. A little more forgiving. The surface mount board, you have to be careful. You might suck up all the components in with the solder sucker. But with this size of components, no problem. And it works fairly well. Like I said, well-constructed board. I didn't lift the pads off of it or anything like that. Very good board. One last one. Okay, we got everything off. out with a little bit of solder wick just to clean up the joints a touch. The majority of them are clean, but I just want to get off any excess. Furthermore, I didn't like that solder that was on there that broke, because it probably is contaminated with dirt, dust, and stuff like that, and you don't want to warm up that solder and have the contaminant melt in with the solder. It'll just end up giving you more trouble down the road. So I'd rather just clean up the board, suck off the old solder, and put down some new fresh solder. If solder can be fresh. I mean, I've never seen solder that had a best before date. Okay, those joints are looking pretty good. Now I'm going to get some flux on the joints. This is kind of just out of practice. I like doing putting flux down onto the board so that the solder will only go to the places it's supposed to. Here we go. A little bit of solder there. You can see just goes right into the spot it's supposed to go. We'll continue on with this one. Very nice. No bridge. Very nice there. That's another good one. And it didn't bridge over. And what I mean by bridging is that they didn't connect to each other. Okay, so let's get the solder off the big joints now. Solder sucker again. One more shot. There was quite a bit of solder there. That one there, that's good. Move on to the last one. There we go. Got them all cleaned up. Here we go, putting on some more flux. And I'm not too particular on these connectors because they are ground, and they're there for, like I said before, as a strain relief so that when you push the cable into the connector, it doesn't move. And here we go again. Lots of solder on these joints. You've sucked up quite a bit of it. A little more solder here, and you can see the flux just bubbling, and does not harm the board, but boy does it make it look bad, doesn't it? It's all black and everything, but we'll clean that up in a second. Okay, looks like I am done. Okay, let's get this thing cleaned up. Little isopropyl alcohol and a brush. You can see it's very tacky. You can see at the top there it's still sticking. And just keep brushing away and it'll all come off and you'll have a nice looking board. Little more. Scrubbing away. And got it all. A little bit at the top, but not too bad. Look at that. Nice shiny joints. That's what you want. That's when you know the solder's melted properly at the right melting point. And that's about it. So now we can just get the device back together. And we should be in business. Here's the board. Here's the connector. And I'll show you the solder joints. You can see there, they look pretty nice there. Nice and shiny, like I said. And everything went according to plan. Now I'm going to slide the board back into the cabinet, the speaker cabinet. It has a couple of slots on the side, and you have to sort of gently glide it in. I've had a bit of a problem getting it in. I had to try 2 or 3 times. You can see those little sort of slots where this board is supposed to slide itself right in. There's no need for any type of fastener for this board. That's what I like about it. It just slides right in, and you're done. You get the wires out of the way. I'm going to get those back in a second here. Look, I have to get back. I had to get it back out again in order to get it to sit properly. A lot of messing around. Got to make sure it goes in right. And get the wires out of the way. And now I'm going to just flip it over so I can have a look at the connectors and make sure that they're flush to the cabinet. Because if they're not, then you're going to have all kinds of trouble trying to get your connectors in, either, you know, the input connector or even the connector for the satellite speakers. They won't sit in there properly and you'll end up having all kinds of grief. Everything's good. So now it's time to button up the wires here. They wrap around the place where the screws fasten into. So you got to sort of be kind of careful just wrapping the wire around. Make sure it's in there and it doesn't get pinched by the outside of the case. And I'll talk a bit about the case in a second here in order to get it apart. I'm just being careful here to make sure I wrap the wires around the standoff for the screws. Everything looks like it's in order. So now I'm going to get the wire from the woofer onto the PC board. It's a small little connector, only goes in one way. Connector goes right there. And just sort of get the case close to the PC board and just snap it right in. There we go, all done. Now carefully get the other half of the speaker cabinet together. Again, I'm being very careful not to pinch the wires, otherwise the repair will become another repair. I have to start all over again. The repair will not be complete. So carefully pushing this down and trying to get it to sit together properly. There is another slot inside the speaker, right there. Hopefully you can see that. And so that thing just sits together and fits perfectly. And that should do that. Now you have to sort of gently push it together to make sure it all goes together. When I was taking apart, interesting thing, here's something I wanted to point out. There's some type of adhesive. Now, one thing I want to mention when I was taking it apart, there is some adhesive between the two pieces of the cabinet, and you have to be careful. It feels like you have another screw there or you're going to break it. What I ended up doing was I just gently kept prying it round and around and around, and eventually I was able to pull it apart. I'm not going to put any adhesive on it now, and I'm just going to screw it back together. I really like this speaker. The speaker's really good. It's got a nice balanced sound. It's not overly bassy, and it doesn't have screaming, you know, mids and highs. It's nicely balanced. I like it as a computer speaker. I like to call it a computer reference speaker. You know, it's not one way or the other, just a nice balanced sound. And you know, these things are still fetching $40 to $90 right now, used 25 years later. So there must be something to them for people willing to pay that kind of money. But if you look around, especially some of the places online, you know, your local buy and sell places, you sometimes can pick them up for $20. As long as the speakers are in good shape, the surrounds haven't rotted away, and mine have not. They almost look brand new. You got yourself a pretty good little multimedia system you can use on your computer for stuff. Okay, a couple more screws here. That should do that. And just torque them down so everything stays tight. Because remember, this thing does vibrate because of the speaker, so you don't want things to come loose. And now the knob for the bass volume, That's another nice thing I like about the speaker. If you want more bass, you can increase it so your sound will be more bassy, or you can tweak it back, almost like working with the crossover in a speaker. Quite nice. Quite a nice little addition. Anyway, that's all I got. It's all buttoned up. I'm ready to go and listen to sound again and edit videos. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.